Cleve Baxter has spent more than 25 years researching the behavior of plants.
Right now we're going to use a pair of electrodes that are regularly used on people but now are mounted between this C-clamp.
Baxter is a polygraph expert and has conducted lie detector tests for the Army and the CIA. The polygraph is essential to his work with plants.
This is a conventional piece of polygraph equipment of which we're using only 1/3, the galvanic skin response section. Now I'm going to activate the chart drive on the equipment and turn up the sensitivity and balance in the plant between these electrodes. Now, the tracing we're getting now represents the plant. All right, now I'm going to take a scalpel and try to get underneath the skin level of my hand, see if the pain first of cutting causes any change in the plant.
It is an experiment Baxter has performed many times. By inflicting pain on himself, he hopes to register some reaction in the plant. It is proof, Baxter feels, of perception on an elemental level. All living things, he believes, react to the pain of another. For whatever reason, the experiment fails. Perhaps Baxter has performed it too often. His reaction may not have been genuine. Baxter now tries the experiment with In Search of staff member Kay Hoffman.
I'm going to balance this in and turn it to automatic 0 in this case. And let it quiet down.
He calibrates the machine, this time in hope of achieving a response from the plant to the cutting of Kay's hand with a scalpel.
You got a hand to spare? Right here? All right. Now, what I'm going to do is just to cut a little bit here. When you feel this, the thing that was going fairly calm is now going pretty wild. I think the plant is tuned into your apprehension pretty nicely. Now let's see if it's tuned into this. Now, I'm going to put some iodine in there.
This time, the results were positive. The plant has reacted in some way. Baxter can only conclude that it is a reaction to the pain felt by another living thing.
All right, now, let me take a look at this with you. This is sort of interesting because through here we were doing nothing that related to this, and then we decided to ask you if you would sit down and let us cut your hand. And right here is where you had the invitation to sit down and your apprehension of doing so. And here's where I'm starting the cutting. And actually your apprehension is worse than my putting the iodine in, which apparently didn't hurt too much. In fact, the thing quieted down while that was happening. But the idea of being cut, the cutting itself, caused it to go into this vibratory thing. So all the way through here, you can see the changes that you may be able to match to your own mental set.
Cleve Baxter is concerned not only with plants, but with primary perception in all simple life forms. Bacteria is the simplest plant life, and Baxter believes the bacteria in yogurt also yields evidence of what scientists call primary perception.
All right, now I'm going to take some yogurt into this syringe, wipe the excess yogurt off, and fill the test tube with the yogurt, which contains two kinds of bacteria used in dairy products. And I'm going to take the two silver wires that are being held and clamped into place by this little device. Put the two silver wires down into the yogurt and place them in a steady position with this little clamp.
Baxter sees no difference between wiring the finger of a person to his lie detector machine and wiring a beaker of yogurt. The yogurt is alive too.
Little alligator clips.
But does the simple life form at work in the yogurt have feelings?
And these leads go to the biological preamplifier up here, and from there into the final amplification that drives the pen motors.
How wide is the gulf between man and plant, if there is a gulf at all?
Now we're getting a tracing from the bacteria in the yogurt. Now we're going to see what will happen when I take a capsule of antibiotic material and sprinkle it into the yogurt and stir it in. And as I stir it up, we'll see if it has an effect.
Baxter has killed the bacteria growing in the yogurt.
I would say that's not enough.
There is no reaction from the other sample. He begins again with a fresh beaker and a different experiment.
All right, now I'm going to take some milk and on the count of 5 pour the milk into the yogurt that I have in this beaker. Stir it up, and usually it takes maybe 15 or 20 seconds for the bacteria to find the nutrient. See what happens. You have about a 15 or 20 second delay, and then this is the kind of activity you get here. Well, what I suspect is going on is that this yogurt is being fed the nutrient, and the other yogurt is trying to find its own nutrient. It's not making out. In other words, it's not being fed anything, and yet it somehow is aware that the other yogurt is being fed.
To Cleve Baxter, the inescapable conclusion is that even the simplest living things have feelings. If you've ever awakened in the night with the knowledge that something has happened to someone you love and found out you were right, you might have wondered who or what was the messenger. One intriguing idea presented by this trip through a world of other voices is the possibility that plants carry the message. Apparently, plants feel and hear and speak to each other. Can they talk to us? It's clear we have a lot more to learn by deciphering these other voices, by listening with the patience this green world has apparently lavished on us for so long. As the races of man speak in different languages, so do the varieties of plants manifest their voices in different ways. They seem to be able to hear and understand us. For the time being, however, we must listen to them through our machines. One day, those machines may be unnecessary.
Welcome to the Baxter School of Lie Detection. I'm Cleve Baxter, and during the next 6 weeks here in San Diego, you're going to be involved in a very intensified instructional course in the use of the polygraph, or so-called lie detector.
In the course of a career dedicated to investigation for federal and municipal law enforcement agencies, Cleve Baxter has earned a reputation as the world's foremost authority on the polygraph.
Well, as of February 2nd, 1966, I'd been in the polygraph field full-time for 18 years, and this particular morning I'd been working all night in the laboratory and had decided to water a plant in the lab, very similar to the plant here, Dracaena cane plant. My thought was that as the moisture arrived to the leaf of the plant, the plant should be a better conductor, and I should get a reading on the chart. Well, strangely enough, I didn't get this at all. And in fact, it did just the opposite. Instead of the tracing edging upward as it should have on the chart, it went into sort of a wild excitation, very similar to the first part of a human taking a polygraph test. But then it occurred to me, just about 14 minutes along, what would be the real optimum threat to the well-being of a plant. In fact, the imagery of fire entered my mind, and I not only thought, but I fully intended to burn the very leaf that was being tested with a match. I had no matches in the room at the time, and I don't smoke, and I had to go next door to my secretary's area to get a match. But the interesting thing is that right at the split second that imagery of fire entered my mind, the tracing reflecting the changes in the plant just went right off the top of the page. And the only thing that occurred at that time, no lighting of a match, nothing else, merely the imagery of fire. And I must say that as of 14 minutes along in that initial observation on the morning of February 2nd, 1966, my life just hasn't been the same.
Responding to the initial experience, when a plant apparently read his mind, Baxter works nights on his own in his small laboratory. His goal is to perfect an experiment that will satisfy the rigid criteria of the scientific establishment. Baxter hopes to show that plants react to any termination of life in their immediate environment. During the next 6 hours, at some undetermined moment chosen by a randomizer, these brine shrimp will fall to their deaths in boiling water. By totally automating his equipment, Baxter is determined to eliminate human influence. In another room, completely separate from his laboratory, Baxter has placed a philodendron plant, a polygraph, and a videotape recorder. Carefully, he places a leaf between a pair of electrodes that will monitor the electrical activity of the plant. As he has done during countless police interrogations, Baxter establishes a baseline on his polygraph to get an accurate recording of the reaction of his subjects. The video recorder will tape the details of the experiment in Baxter's absence.
For the automation of this experiment to be successful, I have to get a certain distance away from my lab so that my consciousness won't affect the results. I hadn't previously experienced any direct or indirect exposure to mystical philosophies. My contacts had been well within the establishment, particularly federal government agencies and law enforcement. Before working with plants, I hadn't really thought much about the idea of greater consciousness or awareness. Now I look around, but what I see has a different meaning.
The California dawn often finds Cleve Baxter still at work in a small room behind his laboratory. The results of each night's work must be carefully analyzed and recorded. In spite of his high percentage of successful results, only a few daring individuals from the scientific establishment have come forward with offers to replicate his experiments or test his results. The great majority are content simply to condemn his efforts without taking the trouble to investigate their validity.
A few brine shrimp die and a plant feels their death. I think it's the smallness of the event that makes it so significant. It means that even on the lower levels of life, there's a profound consciousness or an awareness that binds all things together.
Is it coincidence that a plant will grow its petals into an exact replica of a female bee, so alluring to the male bee that he attempts to mate with the petal, and in so doing, pollinates the orchid? At the University of California, Hayward, across the bay from San Francisco, research is presently being conducted on the electrical potential of plants.
then I try to compare those signals to emotional changes in a human. In other words, we take a person and we sit him away from the plant, and he goes through
Randy
emotional
Fonts,
changes.
a researcher in parapsychology, proposes an experiment inspired by Cleve Baxter's initial experience.
Would this constitute a tight, sound scientific experiment?
Dr. Norman Goldstein, a professor of biology and expert in the new science of electrophysiology, agrees to review the results of the experiment, which will determine whether the plant Mimosa pudica actually responds to human emotions.
As you can see, we have the normal copper screen and such as that Faraday cage, block out electromagnetic signals, radiations. But in addition to that, we have a plexiglass over here that blocks the wind movements and ion movements and air flows that would, shake the plant, cause abnormal signals. We also have a motion detector in here, which will allow us to look and see whether any external motions or movements have interfered with the experiment, so we can tell when the plant has actually vibrated.
Where's the subject with respect to the cage now?
We're going to seat him, within a few feet of the cage, probably about 5 feet. And he'll be viewing a screen, he'll be watching a stimulus movie that we're providing. Mm-hmm. And then his emotional responses should carry over into the cage here and affect the plant. That's what we're hoping for.
We're going to be measuring your galvanic skin response, which means your emotional activity.
Okay. Let's hope there is some.
Is that too tight?
No, that's great.
Okay. This is going to measure your blood volume. And this will measure the muscle tension in your forehead, or the EMG.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Good.
That looks very convincing. I have to think about that one. Well, let's say that the experiment is quite well done.
Yeah.
Then you're claiming that the individual's response is producing some kind of energy display. When you're finished analyzing your data and it supports your contentions, you can imagine what importance this will be. You can imagine it'll change our whole picture of how we relate to plants, that we're interacting with them all the time.
Plants react to man-made music. Do humans react to music produced by plants?
in the belief that a tangible expression of plant emotions would bring about a harmonious interaction between human beings and the plant kingdom, artist John Lifton devised what he calls green music. Plants have been wired into a complex computer. Their change of mood as they react to the crowds of visitors will be converted into musical expression.
I'll check that other electrode placement. Okay, Richard.
As the people move among the plants, the sounds they hear are the plants reacting to their presence. An ephemeral exchange of energy, linking two diverse life forms, becomes a symphony of emotions.
Come on now, look at the fern. It's right over there. Now be careful, be very careful. It's the orange. Oh, isn't that pretty?
During recent years, gardening enthusiasts throughout Japan have been privileged to witness the remarkable demonstrations of Dr. and Mrs. Kenneth Hashimoto. Dr. Hashimoto, Managing Director and Chief of Research for the Fuji Electronic Industries, has constructed special instruments which translate the electrical output of plants into modulated sounds, giving voice to a cactus. Relying on her affinity for plants, Mrs. Hashimoto looks forward to actual conversation with her cactus. Convinced that it possesses an intelligence, she is determined to teach it the Japanese alphabet.
Research conducted in the Soviet Union leads scientists to believe that plants may think. Attached to delicate electronic instruments, a cabbage plant registers annoyance to the exhaling of tobacco smoke on its leaf surfaces. A scene familiar in any kitchen takes on special importance in this experiment.
Володя, переключи задание по всем параметрам. Тамара, бери препарат. Все готовы? Начинай.
In some mysterious way, the plant which is attached to the instrument is able to feel the mutilation of its comrade. In a more advanced experiment, technicians were asked to pass through a laboratory containing 2 living cabbage plants. One of the subjects has been instructed to destroy the plant which is not attached to the electronic instruments. Hours later, the technicians are asked to return to the scene of the crime. The evidence is clear. The remaining plant has correctly identified the assailant.
Ты должна быть сердитой.
Since 1959, the Academy of Sciences of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics has advanced research for the application of automation and cybernetics in plant husbandry. Connected to electronic instrumentation, these plants express their wishes directly, without the need of human guidance. In agricultural centers of the future, plants will show themselves to be fully rational beings, controlling their intake of water and nutrients, and even regulating the temperature and humidity of their environment. We're just beginning to understand the language of plants. It is a difficult and fascinating road wherein a multitude of surprises awaits us.
Only recently has it really come to prominence in cannabis growing as, more regulation. But very simply, VPD is a measurement. It's a tool to kind of measure the